This is the second in my series on basic economics. Now last time I discussed the fact that humans act and related that fact to preferences. Now one point that I must highlight from that video before we move forward is that the logic of action implies that in any action a person is doing what they believe to be best. That is, they're pursuing the perceived best path toward what is their most preferred end at that time. Now, taking this knowledge in hand, let's talk some about the logic of exchange. Now let's imagine a case where we have Bob. Bob has a head of lettuce. Now Sally has a chicken. But each of them prefers to have what the other one has. That is, Bob would rather have a chicken than a head of lettuce, and Sally would rather have a head of lettuce than a chicken. Now it's rather obvious what they're going to do. Right? They want to trade. Bob will approach Sally and say, "Hey, I see you have a chicken. I'd kind of like to have a chicken. Will you take this lettuce in exchange for that chicken?" Now, Sally would say, "Wow, I've been hoping to find a head of lettuce. Let's do it." And both of them will improve their well-being, as each receives something that they value more than the thing that they give up. Now, a simple conclusion comes from this. In any voluntary exchange, each party involved expects to improve their own well-being. Now, the mutually beneficial nature of exchange has a very profound implication. That is that diversity of preferences. That is, you and I will only bother exchanging if our preference orders are different. To make that clear, let's examine our example one more time. Say that Bob has a head of lettuce and Sally has a chicken. Both of them would rather have the chicken than the head of lettuce. That is, they have the same preference order. Now, what's going to happen in this case? Well, I imagine it would go something like this. Bob will approach Sally and say, "Hey, I see you have a chicken. I'd kind of like to have a chicken. Will you take this lettuce in exchange for the chicken?" And Sally will say, "Why would I do that? No way!" And they won't exchange. Now, why not? Because the exchange would be bad for Sally. She'd be giving up something she values more, the chicken, for something she values less, the lettuce. So she simply refuses to go along with it. So, if an exchange is expected to be bad for just one of the parties, it's not going to happen. Now, an additional point here arises. If information is good, then all mutually beneficial exchanges will take place. That is, if Bob and Sally know about each other and know that the other has something they want, then we expect them to make any mutually beneficial exchanges. Naturally, it takes time for this information to get out, but we expect the market to move toward that point, the point where all mutually beneficial exchanges have occurred. Now here, there's a significant impact for government policy. Right? The banning of any particular exchange will either do nothing because the parties wouldn't have exchanged anyway, or it will prevent an exchange that is mutually beneficial to those who decide to undertake it. The requirement of a particular exchange, that is, requiring that it happen, will either do nothing because the parties would have done it anyway, or it will force an exchange that is bad for at least one of the parties involved. So, any time the government forces or prevents an exchange, it's definitely hurting someone, though it might be helping someone, possibly. After all, Bob would have been very happy if Sally had been forced to give him the chicken and take the lettuce. So, from the pursuit of preferences, we've determined that, at times, exchanges will be mutually beneficial. We've also determined that, if a voluntary exchange happens, it must be expected to be mutually beneficial to both parties in the exchange. If an exchange does not happen, it must have been expected to hurt at least one of the parties in the potential exchange, or perhaps the two people just didn't know about each other. Information was bad, in other words. Now, something you may not have noticed is that we've stumbled upon how prices are formed. After all, when Bob and Sally exchange, what's the price of the head of lettuce? It is simply a chicken. Similarly, the price of a chicken is a head of lettuce. Of course, this example gives prices in a system without money, a system we call barter. But what if money were involved? Let's say that Bob is willing to pay up to $30 for a chicken, and Sally's willing to sell the chicken for no less than $20. In that case, we can be confident that Bob and Sally will arrive at a mutually beneficial exchange. After all, Bob is willing to pay $30 for a chicken, and Sally's willing to take $20. But exactly what the price will be is not certain. all we can say is that the two will haggle and arrive at some price that's between $20 and $30. Now let's add an additional level of complexity. Let's say that there are two potential buyers, Bob and Tom. Bob is willing to pay up to $30, and Tom is willing to pay up to $25. In this case, we can actually say more about what the price will be. Now suppose that Tom offers Sally $25 for the chicken. Now he's not willing to go any higher. Now she'll gladly accept it. She only needs $20. But she'll only accept it if she doesn't think she can get more. She would rather have $26 than $25. So if this exchange were to happen, it would be perfectly fine for Tom and for Sally, but it's totally unacceptable to Bob. After all, Bob would happily pay more than this $25 for the chicken. He'd be willing to pay up to $30. So what he'll do is he'll approach Sally and say, "Wait, don't take this $25 from Tom. I'll pay you more than that." So Bob and Tom would be forced to bid against each other, like in any auction, until the price is somewhere between $25.01 and $30. Now the price has to be higher than $25 to get Tom to stop bidding. He's willing to pay up to $25. And it can't be any higher than $30, or Bob will stop bidding. So the more potential buyers there are, we can say the lowest price will edge higher and higher. Also, we can be confident that the person who values the chicken most will get it, because they're going to be willing to outbid everyone else. As long as they have the money, the person who values the chicken the most is going to get it. Now we can approach things from the other side too. Let's say that Bob only wants one chicken, he's the only buyer, and he's willing to pay up to $30 for this chicken. Now Sally has one she's willing to sell. She's willing to sell it for $20 or more, but Jane also has a chicken and is willing to take $25 or more for it. Now in this case, we can say that the price for the chicken will be between $20 and $24.99. It has to be that low, or Bob will get offered chickens from both Sally and Jane. He only wants one, so he'll just offer lower prices. Sally and Jane will be trying to undercut each other to sell their chickens. So, what will happen is that these two will undercut each other until the point where one of them is not willing to go any lower. In this case, it'd be Jane. She's not willing to go any lower than $25. So, Sally drops it down to $24.99, perhaps something less, something between $20 and $24.99, and Bob is willing to take that deal. Here we can be confident that the person who ends up selling the chicken is the one that values it the least. After all, they'll be willing to undercut all the other sellers. Now let's complicate things just a little bit more. Let's say we have a double auction. That is, we have two buyers and two sellers. So we have Bob and Tom buying. Bob is willing to pay no more than $30, Tom no more than $25. Sally and Jane are selling. Sally will take no less than $20, Jane will take no less than $25. In this case, we can actually say exactly what the price will be. It's going to be $25. That is the only price in which the number of buyers is equal to the number of sellers. Say, for example, the price is $26. In that case, only Bob wants to buy. The price is simply too high for Tom. But Sally and Jane are both willing to sell. So they're going to try to undercut each other to sell to Bob. If the price is at $26, there will be pressure to push it down. Now let's say that the price is at $24. In this case, both Bob and Tom are willing to buy, but only Sally is willing to sell. So Bob and Tom are going to try to outbid each other for Sally's chicken. Now at $25, both Tom and Bob are willing to buy, and both Sally and Jane are willing to sell. So $25 is the price at which there's no pressure to push the price up through buyers outbidding each other, or down through sellers undercutting each other. So there you have it. Prices arise naturally from this process of exchange. Now this is true whether there are a few sellers or whether there are many. It's true whether there are a few buyers or whether there are many. The logic of exchange and prices also guarantees that those individuals that value the items most will get it as long as they can pay. All that is necessary is for participants in the market to know that this opportunity for exchange exists, and everything else flows from the logic of preferences, which is founded on the logic of action.